Okay. Hi, folks. Steven here. And this is going to be the main focus of this presentation is going to be a recap of this weekend's Anime Milwaukee in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. A convention I've been to many times. Monitoring it on another laptop over here. So give me a second here just to switch down. Do I have the auto? Let's turn that down to 144. Sorry about that. Should have make sure next time I'll make sure I mute it before it starts. But I do like to keep this here, and it's really the only way I can seem to see the chat for some bizarre reason. Is the only way that works. Anyway, so Anime Milwaukee was this weekend. But before we get to that, there's a couple quick announcements I want to make. I'll talk about these more at the end of the video, at the end of our live session. And if you have any questions about any of this, go ahead and toss something in the comments there. Let's see. So first off, coming up very soon, this next Saturday at 8 p.m. Central, Anne and I are planning on doing a live stream of our discussion of the newest Pokemon movie, The Power of Us. We're going to be talking about the music from that movie, comparing the Japanese and English theme songs. And we decided, like I said, we would do it live. It's going to be on right here on YouTube, as far as I know, on Google Hangout. We're going to do a little pre-stream beforehand just to work out any kinks we have to do with that. But that's our plan. Second thing I wanted to mention before we get to Anime Milwaukee is that over in April, I'm going to be going to Germany. I am going to be going to Berlin for the European Internationals there. Within the last week or so, they finally announced the actual venue. We knew the dates, we knew the city, we just didn't know the actual venue that was going on there. And I'm really excited to be going there for a variety of reasons. As you may guess from my last name, there is a little bit of German heritage in my family. So that'll be a lot of fun. But more on those later. And like I said, if you're in the chat room, go ahead and put in any comments that you would like with that. But Anime Milwaukee, so that's been going on for, I think they said this is their 12th year, or they've been doing it for 12 years. I've been covering it, let's see, I think since either like 2011 or it must be 2011 is when I started doing coverage of that. I would go around. This year was similar but also different. So the convention is held in downtown Milwaukee across really like two buildings. Some of it is at the Hyatt in downtown Milwaukee, and then some of it is at, I think it's called the Wisconsin Center now. It has a long, strange naming history, that convention center in downtown Milwaukee. It was the it was the Midwest Express Center, and it was the Frontier Airlines Center when they bought out Midwest Airlines. And then that transferred over to Delta for a year or two, and now it's just the Wisconsin Center, so no real branding there anymore. But in any case, this is quite probably the largest anime convention in Wisconsin over the years, certainly one of the largest. They had a number of guests, they had a fair number of panels, they had video gaming, they had tabletop gaming, all sorts of fun stuff that I got to try out a lot there. I was a little bit disappointed by a few particular things. One of those was that the schedule, it's always relatively late for the press session schedule. But this year it was unfortunately kind of so late that I didn't. I would have had to take at least half a day off on Friday in order to get to the person I really want to talk to. I think it's J. Michael Tatum. You would know him best as the voice of Tobias in the fourth generation in the League arc there. Unfortunately, I have yet again missed him. I've been at many conventions where he's been, but I have not had a chance to run by him, strangely. So unfortunately, I kind of missed that, and I initially thought there wouldn't be any video game competitions this weekend. As I'll explain later, that is not true. There definitely were some, and more on that later. I did know they were doing a bunch of stuff in the, they're doing a fair amount of Pokemon stuff in the tabletop gaming area for the trading card game. And so I got to Milwaukee reasonably late. I left after work and just kind of drove straight there, relatively uneventful drive to Milwaukee. And once I got myself dropped off Friday night at the hotel, I just kind of stayed there. And then the next morning, I took care of sort of my press privileges and stuff like that. So Saturday morning is when I really got to doing stuff. And they had a Pokemon League that was running from 10 a.m. to noon. And kind of an interesting group of people there. And I mean that in the best way possible, because they had some male, some female. I think a few of them, I had a little trouble communicating with them. I think they were hard of hearing, and there were a couple of people there, and I think they were just kind of off in their own group. I would have liked to have socialized with them a bit more. You may remember a number of years ago, I did an interview, a written interview with a deaf player from the Rockford area. That's always kind of interesting. When you can find things like that. I would have liked to have gotten to know them better, but I found some other folks and started talking to them, played a few games. There was one person, I think her name was Katie, young woman. We did, she really wanted to see the Let's Go game on my Switch, so we did some co-op there, and then we played a card game, and very nice person there, so met some real great people there as usual. After that, I should point out also, unfortunately, the Pokemon cosplay was also on Friday afternoon, and that's just how things are sometimes. So I did miss that. I did try to go to the classic Nintendo, which, since Pokemon's been in the U.S. for over 20 years now, I think it qualifies as a classic Nintendo property. Although I don't know that there was a modern Nintendo category if you wanted to dress up as, I don't know, Splatoon or something like that. But didn't really see any Pokemon folks there. It was kind of interesting because they had this, for the cosplay, they had this 2 rooms side by side. They had a divider up between them, and the other cosplay thing going on there was the Disney side of it. They had all the Disney cosplayers, so but they would take photographs and stuff, and I unfortunately did not get a chance to download those to my computer. I will be showing you some other pictures later. But anyway, went to that, and then I decided, well, I better, take a look at more of the stuff. So I eventually went down to the video gaming area, and I had originally thought that there were not going to be any video game tournaments this weekend. And I get there, and I start looking. The video games are in this big area on the first floor of the Wisconsin Center. Pretty big room there. They had arcade machines. They had all sorts of retro consoles, modern consoles, everything in between. A lot of stuff you could take a look at there. I believe it was being run by the folks from KitsuneCon, which is another Wisconsin, I think, convention somewhere else in the state. They were handling the gaming stuff, and they were sort of a new group of people, which is, I guess, one reason why they initially weren't going to have these tournaments. But I get to the back of the room, and I notice, they have a couple people in front of TVs, and a bunch of them are playing Smash Ultimate. And I realized, this looks a lot like a tournament. So I asked around, and lo and behold, it is a tournament, and I just happened to walk in at the right time. I forget how far they were in. There was still another hour or two left in there, but I did manage afterwards to get an interview with the winner of the tournament, and I hope to get that up on the channel within the next week or so. Very nice guy. I believe he's a local to the Milwaukee area, but that'll be a lot of fun, and like I said, hope to get that up. So I did ask around a little bit if they were doing or had done a Pokemon tournament over the weekend. It sounds like that was not. I guess they were deferring to some of the stuff on the tabletop games TCG side for that, I suppose. But I guess that was a nice surprise. So I did get an interview out of this, and like I said, within the next week or so, I hope to have that on. Anyway, so let's see. After that, that was basically it for Saturday. Tournament went on for quite a while. They had to start the Tekken tournament that was running that evening as well. Had to sort of split up the space a little bit for that. As far as the tournament itself, I don't want to spoil too much about the interview for Smash Brothers, but I mean, they had the Piranha Plant. A few people tried that. A lot of different Pokemon characters. Apparently, Pokemon Trainer, very popular character. And actually, I saw at least one person using Pichu, which is, I guess, supposed to be, well, it's hard to say what's a serious character in Smash Brothers, but Pichu has always kind of been kind of a joke, I suppose. But some folks were actually using it. So neat stuff there. Let's see what else is going on. So, and then Sunday, let's see, they did have technically another league session from 10 to noon. I didn't get there right at 10 because I was packing stuff up for the drive home, and things just there weren't as many people there. However, later in the afternoon at 1 o'clock, they had a quote-unquote team-up pre-release. I forget exactly what they called it, because it's obviously not a pre-release because the set's been out for a couple of weeks, but they had more of those pre-release boxes. I should point out this the organized stuff at Anime Milwaukee here is run by Gnome Games, which I think is based in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, I want to say. It's kind of hard for me. Fond du Lac is about 45 or 50 miles northwest of Milwaukee. There's a lake sort of in the interior. If this is Wisconsin, there's a lake right around here. Let's imagine this is the Illinois state line. And let's say this is Madison, this is Milwaukee. Fond du Lac would be right about here, I would say. It's Fond du Lac is sort of south of Appleton and Green Bay and northwest of Milwaukee. But anyway, never been to the store there, but I did get to chat with the folks from there a little bit. Seemed like things were pretty well run there. I didn't play any other tournaments, but the pre-release, let's see. Let me punch up some photos here, so give me a second. I need to... see. I have a couple photos from that, some of the cards I got. Give me a second. Open with. So this is going to be a little bit. Let's see, Windows Photo Viewer. There we go, and then I'll share that screen for you. So not maybe the best way to take a look at this, but let's see what we got here. Share screens. Okay, there we go. Screen share. There we go. Okay, application window, and here we are. Let's see. There we go. All right, you should be seeing some pictures here from the quote-unquote pre-release. Let's see. Anyway, this first picture, as you know, with the current pre-release setup, there are like 4 different, at least somewhat different, combinations of cards you can get in there. This is the one I got. So this is the Bisharp and Muck combo with a 1/1/1 Nidoqueen line. Also, it's a Farfetch'd and an assortment of trainers. Let's see. Let me see. Okay, there we go. Zoom in a little bit here. So you can see I got the Bisharp, Muck, kind of skateboard in there. That was neat. And then my promo over here is this Nidoqueen. Let's see, shrink that back down. There we are. So kind of interesting. At the actual pre-release I went to, I know I got the Charizard Rapidash Zebstrika set, so I kind of knew what to expect for some of this here. But this worked out to be a pretty good combination. It was actually 3-0, and we had 9 players, so there were no other 3-0, so I guess technically I won the tournament, but I did have a fair bit of fun there. Muck has that great attack where you can do 40 damage for 1 energy, which is not bad in and of itself, and then you get to do 2x poison on them. Let's see. One thing I did notice, if we go to the next slide, let's see. So these are, if you take a look at this bottom line here, those are all the, what I like to call orphaned cards I got. I know, first world problem. These are all the cards I had just no way to play in the pre-release because I was missing. Like I had 2 Dragonair and a Dragonite, but no Dratini. Let's see, Persian, but no Meowth. Let's see, Zoroark, no Zorua. 2 Cosmogem, but no Cosmog. Let's see, Zebstrika, no Blitzel. Let's see, I forget. Oh, the water one's a Golda. You get the idea there. Oh, and that last one at the very end, that's like the hardest one. I don't know if you'll ever get to play it. You have to get really lucky to play it, but that's Morgan, which is a very interesting card. I want to zoom in on that. So this is another one of those Battle Chateau or whatever it's called. Excuse me. So you need to have 3 other cards, and I think those are the other 3 supporter cards. So you need to have 4 cards in your hand, get rid of those, but then you get like 12 cards and as much energy as you like. So that's, I suppose, a different type of team up if you want to look at it that way. So good luck ever getting to do that in the pre-release. I don't think that's very likely, because I don't think any of these those supporter cards are in like the pre-release, like the evolution set. They do have some trainers from the set. Oops. Let's see. I don't need to do. Well, I got one more photo here. Okay, I do want to point out that a couple people. One of the other promos you can get here is Charizard, and some folks. Oops, it's going through this. I don't. Escape. There we go. Sorry about that. Anywho, let's go over. There we go. So there's a couple Charizard players playing against each other, and it did become Charizard versus Charizard. I had a joke, oh, it's like the first movie. We all remember that scene. But overall, pretty nice group of folks there. It's more or less what I expected. But yeah, so that was the pre-release. I didn't win anything for going 3-0 other than, I suppose, a little bit of pride, but I don't want to put too much out there, I suppose. In any case, so that was sort of the weekend there. Very nice. Like I said, I do have a few suggestions. Knowing that the press sessions were going to be, it varies every year. It's like some years they've had them all on Saturday. Some years they've had them sort of split up. To know at least there were going to be some on Friday afternoon would have helped me out. I would have probably taken half a day off, or maybe even a full day off. I think that's what I did last year. Is I took a full day off. Let's see. Stop the screen share here so you can see me again. Let's see. Okay, give it a second for the. There we are. So yeah. That's always a dicey thing, although they've had problems when they try to cram them all in one day where their communication isn't great, and they've wound up with times where they're double booked. I mean, I'm not super angry at the folks in Anime Milwaukee when that's happened in previous years. It's tough to put on a convention like this. You have so many concerns with security and making sure guests get where they need to be, and all that fun stuff. I do think that there's a declining number of panels in some at this one. I think there was more emphasis on maybe on other things. I'm not sure. But there is one criticism I had from last year that was corrected to an extent, at least. You may remember, if you saw my video from last year's Anime Milwaukee, that I mentioned that there's this big dealer hall. It's on the 3rd floor of the Wisconsin Center. Takes up a pretty big chunk of space. It's kind of hard for me to describe. I don't know the exact square footage or dimensions or anything like that, but they've got several dozen vendors in there. It's one of the largest vendor halls I've been into. And I mentioned last year, yes, it is Anime Milwaukee, but I can usually, in previous years, count on there being at least one or more video game sellers in the thing there, because it's a pretty good overlap between those interest areas. And last year, I looked through the entire thing and did not find any. And that was sort of a recurring pattern with conventions over the last year or so. There was like the only thing I saw for video games at GeekCon here in Madison last year were a couple of reproduction label carts that were framed in sort of a display thing. So that didn't obviously interest me. And then Anime Bonza, I don't think, when I went to Utah a couple months ago, I don't think I saw too much of anything that was an actual video game there. This time around, Anime Milwaukee, they did come through. They had one sort of dedicated gaming vendor, and there was at least one other vendor with some video game stuff. A few games out of us, but there was one, I think they're called, Mobile World Games was the name of their booth or whatever, like that. But they did have a decent selection. They were really crammed in there, kind of, unfortunately. That's very tight spacing and made it kind of hard to get in and out. Sorry to be the person with a backpack there and stuff like that. But I did put my money where my mouth is, and I did pick up some games. So let's go over those right about now. I think that's a kind of a good thing to say. And by the way, if you have any comment on any of this, if you're watching this live, go ahead, put a post or in the comments there. I should be able to see that. Let me just double check here. It's on the top chat. Let me just do a quick check here. Live chat. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. No, not yet. Okay. But if you are watching, or if you want to put a comment in later. So I picked out some games. I'm hoping these aren't repeats from what I have. There's a few I'm not sure about. So the first one I picked up, let's see here, is Mendel Palace. Now, you may not remember this game, but it is actually relevant to Pokemon. Let me take out the whole thing here. So it's, as you can see, it's published by Hudson Soft, which I guess technically makes this Konami property for what it's worth at this point, since Konami bought Hudson. But the actual developer behind this, I think it might be their first game, is Game Freak. And in fact, I'd say some of the music in the game sounds an awful lot like sort of the Game Center theme from Gold and Silver. for whatever reason. I have seen a little bit of this game here or there. I just mostly picked it up as a curiosity. It's got some rather interesting label art there, I guess you could say. Probably not done by anyone at Game Freak. It was probably done. I'm not sure if they were. Well, no, this is Hudson's. This wasn't. It's now Konami. It's not. I was just thinking that folks at My Life in Gaming put out a video in the last month or so talking to someone from Konami who did a lot of their box art in the late 80s and early 90s. But this wouldn't have been them. This would have been a different person because it was a Hudson Soft and that was a separate company at the time. But this is sort of a overhead puzzle platformer type of game. It's hard for me to describe, but you should maybe look up some stuff there. All right, so let's see. Next one I picked up, this is Little Nemo the Dream Master, not to be confused with the much more expensive Little Samson. I was actually kind of surprised. I thought I knew Little Samson was a different game than this. But I thought Dream Master was not a cheap game either, but I got a pretty good price on this, I will say. This is based on, I guess, a French comic of some sort, and it's one reason you haven't seen it come around again. But it's another licensed game by Capcom. There's some pretty good ones from that era and into the 90s, and we'll talk more about one in just a moment. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, so this is one I think I might already have a copy of, but I hope not. This is Chippendale Rescue Rangers, of course, the video game based on the TV show from... Well, the TV show ran from like 89, 90, 91-ish. And for a while in syndication as well. This, of course, is the game based on it. Actually, I remember there's an episode of the Rescue Rangers TV show where they have this robotic thing and they reprogram it by like swapping out video game cartridges. And I thought it would be kind of funny to like do a Photoshop and swap this in there as the one that makes it go berserk or something. It's a good game. I just kind of thought that was funny because that's sort of the plot of the episode. But glad to pick this one up. I really wish they put out that Capcom Disney NES collection on the let's see, on the Xbox One and PS4. They have not ported it to the Switch because the Wii U was kind of dying out at that point. I mean, really dying out at that point. But I would love for them to put that out there. Okay. And then I hope my mom isn't watching this, but not for the reason you think. Her birthday is coming up, and we usually just go out for dinner, but I thought I'd buy her a few small things. So one of them is this Harry Potter and Prisoner of Azkaban. She has the Game Boy Advance Goblet of Fire game, and she'll need to dig out like her DS Lite or something to play this if she wants to, but I don't think this game is as good as the Goblet of Fire game, which is actually fairly well regarded. But this was something I decided to pick up there. And then here's kind of an odd one. This is the Game & Watch Gallery 4. Now the reason this is odd, this is of course the Game Boy Advance installment. Let's see, can we get the focus? With the small cartridges, it's always harder to get these to focus. There's not a ton to see here. It just says Game & Watch Gallery 4. All right. But they started this on the original Game Boy, went to the Game Boy Color and into the Game Boy Advance. But these are the old, Mr. Game & Watch from Smash Brothers is loosely based on the various Game & Watch games and various animations from there. And this is the... Excuse me. I'm okay. The Game Boy Advance edition of that. And for some reason, this was in sort of the bargain trade that they had there. So it was very cheap. Like I asked him, I said, well, we'll sell it to you for the bargain price there, because there's a lot of licensed game. And I think they might have thought this was some sort of weird, low budget shovelware game compilation and not like a Nintendo first party game. But got a good deal on that. And then let's see, one more game I bought. Let's see, is this one. This is called Tetrisphere. This game has a rather somewhat odd and I would say interesting history. So let's see, this is Tetris, kind of in name only. I mean, it's different from every other Tetris game out there. It's got sort of the blocks, although there are a few different shapes you won't see, but you sort of move them around this sphere, and your goal is to kind of clear them out. I think it became a Tetris game at some point in development. I think Nintendo had the console Tetris rights, and that's sort of how this became a quote-unquote Tetris game. Got a very interesting soundtrack, very techno-based, and I remember renting it a few times back in the 90s and liking it. So it's kind of nice to finally pick up a copy for myself. Okay, so let's see here. Like I said, any questions you have about Anime Milwaukee, overall, I really did enjoy myself there. You never get as much done as you want, especially when you're carrying around so much equipment like I do. I have got to find some way when I go to conventions to lighten my load there, just because it gets, so kind of can get so overwhelming there with the various things, and sort of discourages me from moving around a lot at the convention. But enjoyed my time there. Glad there were some video games there, even though it was like 1 1/4 places. But like I said, I know it is technically an anime convention. I'm one of these days I have to get down to like a Midwest Gaming Classic in Milwaukee, because they're going to have obviously a huge selection there and some various other things. But yeah, if you have a convention like this in your area, absolutely consider going. You're going to meet a lot of great people, and I think have a really good time there. I wish I had started going to these a few years earlier, especially once I got out of college and had more disposable income, because you can definitely spend a lot of money at these things. After all said and done, I guess the other interesting thing about this is it was kind of a rough drive back from Milwaukee to Madison. We had a fair amount of snow on the roads today, and they were not in great condition. I had to slow down a little bit. So, but big thanks, of course, to our law enforcement and road workers and stuff like that on a day like today. But those are sort of the main things. So I did want to go back when we're talking about this. I did want to recap from the beginning. You may remember I made 2 announcements about some upcoming things for the channel. So first I want to get that interview with the Smash Brothers player. I want to get that up within the next week or so. The second thing is this next upcoming Saturday at 8 Central, we're going to be live streaming. Ann and I are going to be live streaming our discussion of the Power of Us movie. We're going to be talking about that and working our way through the music there. Remember, let's see, there's Breath, and on the English side we have Power of Us. We'll also be talking about the score of the movie and stuff like that. So that'll be a lot of fun. Please join us for that. And then, like I said, over in, let's see, in April, late April, I think it's the last full weekend of April or whatever, I'm going to be headed to Berlin, Germany for the European Internationals there. The very least, I'll be buying a spectator badge, but really looking forward to that. I know we have at least one fan in Germany, and hopefully that person, if you want to say hello, that'd be obviously a great time. I've wanted to go to Germany for a very long time. There's a lot of German heritage in Wisconsin from a lot of the folks from where the German immigrants settled here a ways back. And not to disparage it, but that may explain why one of our sports team has people wear foam rubber cheese, and the other one has a sausage race in the 7th inning stretch. I mean that in the best way possible. It's just kind of we don't take ourselves too seriously, I suppose. But I did kind of want to mention that. And I actually, at least maybe it's back at my mom's house, I had a cheese head, at least back in the 90s. So card-carrying member. But I really want to go to Germany. Really looking forward to that. This year is the 30th anniversary of the opening of the Brandenburg Gate. I think that was actually in October later this year, but that was when East and West Berlin, they could start freely moving between the two, and eventually that led to the reunification of the country. So big year for Germany just in general, and I'm going to be really proud to go there. Hope the tournament winds up being really interesting. I won't be competing in the main event most likely. But always good to meet people. Got to brush up on my German too. I took that in middle and high school, but I need to learn more there. Need to refresh myself a little bit. So that is a big thing coming in at the end of April. So still about 2 months away, but very much looking forward to it. And then other musical news I wanted to point out. There's a new Pokemon cover coming out. I don't usually mention these too much, but it's from a source you may have heard of. So there's this organization called the Vitamin String Quartet. It's not really one specific group of people, but It's sort of a label that puts out a bunch of stuff, and they're doing these nerd wedding albums. And one of them is, let's see, it comes out in a couple weeks. I think it's March, probably the first Friday in March, or maybe the second one. I'm not sure precisely when, but early March. And it's going to have Tears of Life, a string quartet version of that from Pokemon First Movie. Not sure. Their stuff can be a little hit or miss sometimes. Sometimes they work out well. I do appreciate that they started to push things a little bit, even with things that may or may not work out great as a quartet arrangement. They technically have done another Pokemon song. They did on their Idol Worship. They have a version of Flying Without Wings. That's really good, actually. It's my favorite string arrangement that I've heard of that song. So I'm hoping that Tears of Life also ends up being really good, and I'd love to see another, like a full-on album in the future of Pokemon stuff from them. But I do kind of want to point that out as sort of something that is coming up ahead in the world of Pokemon. Because of course, I want to hear more about Detective Pikachu, and also I want to see if they're doing anything Pokemon related for Record Store Day. They did just announce that, the ambassadors for this year's Record Store Day are going to be Pearl Jam. Heard of the band. I don't know too many of their songs, even though they were active. I forget exactly what the height of their popularity. Sorry for that. So looking forward to that, but otherwise, I think that's probably going to about do it for this live stream. If you have any questions about Anime Milwaukee, go ahead, toss those in as a comment. We always like that. Any questions about upcoming stuff on the channel? But other than that, I think that's going to about do it for this one. All right, folks, thanks.